Okay, in this tutorial we're actually going to look at how to make buttons inside of Flash and how to change their different states, and also we're going to look at how we can make more interactive or more animated buttons by actually doing them as movie clips instead of the normal button. So what we're first going to do is look at how we do a normal button. So I'm going to come up here and grab my oval tool in Flash and draw myself an oval. As long as you hold down the shift key on your keyboard, that will make sure that your oval is actually a circle. If you take off the shift key, you can make a really odd, long, elongated oval. But holding shift keeps the proper perspective, the proper ratio, and I can make myself a circle. So I have a blue circle here that I've created. You can do whatever color you want. I actually want to make this into a button. If you click on this blue circle, you'll see that the little dots here let you know this is currently selected. Something else that you may have to run into is in case you've turned on the stroke, or what this little pencil is, you may have a line around the outside of this. If that's the case, you may not actually have that currently selected. So the way that I make sure, absolutely for certain, I have everything selected is I go ahead and, using the selection tool up here, I click and drag a box that would encompass everything I want to have selected. That way, if there's anything that I've missed, it all gets selected. So inside of that, I have all that now selected. One thing that I typically do that's a good thing to do right off the bat once you draw something is to make sure that it stays together. I like to group it. That way it's just not out there and can be edited or chopped apart by accident. So I typically always group my stuff, and I am a keyboard person, so occasionally I'll be hitting for Mac the Apple G, or for the actual PC Control G. I'll use that a lot to do my groupings automatically, but you can get to it there from the menu also. So once I have this circle grouped, I can go up to modify and tell it that I want to convert this into a symbol. When I choose that I want to convert it to symbol, I'm given three different options. It can be a graphic, a button, or a movie clip. And you do have the ability to change these later on in case you do accidentally pick the wrong one. You can do the name, and also importantly over here you have what's called the registration point. This point is going to be important because later on when you go to move this around the stage or the actual screen here that we've got for Flash, that's going to tell you where it views the point of its location. Down here at the bottom where it says group and it says the X and there's a Y below it, those numbers represent wherever this dot ends up getting created, be it the center or the upper left hand corner. Those are the two most common places. So I'm going to go ahead and say that I want to create a button, and I'll just call it button. Say OK. This will get converted into an actual symbol and will reside over here in my library. Now the name that we gave this is not extremely important. This is more for us to keep track of, or later on if we hand this off for the other programmers. What's important for actual Flash to use is the section down here called the instance name. This is how this particular button gets called. So it's possible that I could have 30 or 40 copies of this particular symbol all over my screen, and they're all called button because that's what they were named. But that's not what's important to Flash. What's important to Flash is, what is its instance name? It's almost like having a cookie cutter, which is the button, and each time we stamp out a cookie we make a unique item or a unique piece, and the way we make them unique is by giving each one of those instance names. So instance name is going to be a very, very important section for us to fill in. So on this instance name here, I'll go ahead and call this button 1. This would actually be how Flash would go ahead and call this particular button that's on the screen in case we ever have to encode inside of ActionScript. So it's important and a very good routine to make sure you go in and name these. Also, it's a very good idea that you come up with some sort of a naming convention to be using, be it a 3-letter prefix that you decide to use, or if you're like me and you know that you always use all lowercase letters, some people like uppercase, it's just good that you adopt your very own some sort of naming convention so that later on when you're calling these particular instance names inside of your code, you'll know exactly what you're used to typing, so you won't have to worry about having mistakes between how one of them's typed and the other one's typed, because many things here in Flash, these included, can be case sensitive. So the word button with a capital B is completely different than button with a lowercase b. So it's just good to err on the side of caution and make sure that everything is case sensitive and you know exactly how you've typed it. But once we have this created as a button, I can actually double click into the symbol, and we see up here on our timeline we have several different states in which we can view. There's an up state which already has the circular keyframe in it, and we can tell that because these right here are completely blank, completely white frames, nothing in them. But over here, this frame, when deselected, is grayed with a black dot inside of it. If you ever see a black dot, that means it's filled. Think of it as a container. Black is some sort of filling in there. If you see a white dot, that's simply an empty keyframe. So there's nothing there on the stage for that particular keyframe if you ever see it white or empty. What we're going to do is we're actually going to go ahead and put some keyframes in our over, down, and our hit section. And I want to go through and explain all those to you also as we go through this. So first I want to go ahead and click here on my over section of my frame. And I want to go ahead and insert a keyframe there. When I insert it, by default it automatically grabs what was over in the up, and that's fine. But I do want to go ahead and make this a different color, because what these represent is the up section is what your normal state looks like for a button. It's the way people see it normally. Over is when someone brings their mouse over it, hence the word overstate. So whenever we mouse over this, I'd like for it to change a different color so the end user can see that. So I'm going to go in here and get into this group. The way I get into the group, I can either double click it and it shows me I'm inside the group state, or I could have gone up and ungrouped it. Either way, once I'm in here, I can go back and select my circle that I had created. And I'm going to change its color. Maybe I want to change its color over here to a green. So now we have a section, once I bump back out here, I have an up that's a blue and an over that's a green. So when someone brings their mouse over this, it should appear green. That way they know their mouse is over this. The down area is actually the state we see when someone clicks the mouse down on that. You know, what color does the button change when it's pressed down as opposed to just having the mouse hover over it. So I'm going to go ahead and insert a keyframe there, and inside of that I'm going to change its color to, let's say, yellow. So I have a blue, a green, and a yellow. The hit section, it's not used a lot, and a lot of times it's misunderstood. What the hit section is for is, by default, if I try to preview this right now as a movie clip, if I go to control and I test the movie, we'll see that as I move my mouse over this ball or this circle, that it changes to green as I mouse over it, and if I click it and hold the mouse down, it turns yellow. Well, what happens if I want this to change colors on the outside of this circle? Maybe if someone gets really close to this, I want it to change colors. Or we've got extremely small text and I want to make sure they don't have to actually have their mouse over just a certain piece of text. We can use this hit area. Using the hit area, if we insert a keyframe here and we were to draw some sort of object, let's say I want to draw a bigger rectangle here. First I'm going to take away this ball. I don't really want the circle there anymore. And I want to draw a much larger square in its place. Now this area does not actually get seen. It is invisible. Even though I've drawn it and we can see it here, it gets invisible when you run the movie.